witnesses for being here. Look forward to, I think I've talked to most of y'all, and look forward to spending a little bit of time after this committee. So with that, I want to say to all the three witnesses, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much for holding this meeting.
Thank you to the gentleman from Texas. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized for her opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member Cuellar. And I want to welcome our witnesses this morning and thank you for being here. I want to begin by noting the absurdity of holding a hearing on funding for these agencies when Republican leadership has openly decided to pursue a partisan funding process outside of the Appropriations Committee. Slush funding the government through a series of partisan budget bills that are written in back rooms by Republican leadership driven only by political interest is a recipe for catastrophe.
Will the gentlelady suspend?
I will.
We're getting mood music somewhere. Okay, the floor is yours again.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to repeat that. Slush funding the government through a series of bipartisan budget bills that are written in back rooms by Republican leadership driven only by political interest is a recipe for catastrophe. My colleagues across the aisle have loudly hailed the work that we were able to accomplish in passing 11 of the 12 appropriations bills. They are right to do so. It is important, and yes, it is difficult work of governing. That's what governing is about. But the very fact that it is difficult ensures that it will endure. Abandoning the appropriations process in favor of partisan reconciliation bills will come back to haunt this institution. If we go down this road, there is a cliff at the end, and I strongly encourage my colleagues not to do this. The most direct reason that the entire Department of Homeland Security is still shut down after more than 60 days is because Republican leadership refused to pass the bill that the United States Senate unanimously passed twice. They agreed to this. We have the Congress, both House and Senate. You get unanimous consent. We can't get unanimous consent to say that the sky is blue, but you had twice vote in the Senate on unanimous consent basis. And they have passed it twice. It is now still being blocked. They're blocking this bill because they will not allow any funding for the Department of Homeland Security to move forward unless it also includes funding for ICE and CBP, without any new protections against the misconduct that the American people are demanding. They are demanding these protections. These agencies are in dire need of serious reform to build back public trust that has been lost. We all have seen the footage of the brutal and senseless killings of Renee Nicole Good and Alex Preddy. We have seen our cities terrorized, communities afraid and terrorized by ICE and CBP. 44 detainees have died in ICE custody since President Trump took office, including 25 in this fiscal year alone. That is 20-year high for an agency that was only formed in 2003. In January of this year, ICE violated nearly 100 federal court orders, which the chief federal judge in the state of Minnesota estimated was more violations than some federal agencies have committed during their entire existence. Law enforcement in Minnesota is investigating 2 ICE officers for kidnapping, false imprisonment after they kicked in the door of an American citizen without a warrant, forced him outside at gunpoint, threw him in the back of their car, and then drove him around until they realized they had nothing to charge him with. ICE officers in Minnesota tear-gassed a family on their way home from a basketball game, which caused their 6-month-old daughter's heart to stop beating before she was rushed to the hospital. A detention officer in an ICE facility recently pleaded guilty to sexually abusing a detainee over the course of several months in 2025. There was an ongoing investigation into 2 immigration officers for potentially lying under oath after they shot a Venezuelan man in the leg. A Cuban man died by homicide due to excessive force at an ICE-run facility in El Paso. I could go on, but I trust I've made my point. It is abundantly clear that significant reforms are needed. I have been very clear on my own position. We need border security. I do not favor abolishing ICE, but significant reforms are needed. This is the United States of America. Officers should be required to get a warrant from a judge before they kick in someone's door. Agents should not be able to hide their faces and conceal their identities from the public to evade accountability for misconduct. American citizens should not be detained and deported. And when there are cases of misconduct, there should be mandatory independent investigations. I understand that reforming these agencies will be the product of lengthy negotiations. I understand that negotiating is hard work. I understand that it can be tempting to just give up, to try to go it alone. But I promise you, that is not a sustainable or responsible way to govern. I encourage Republican leadership, stop blocking the bill that passed the Senate unanimously twice so we can fund the vast majority of the Department of Homeland Security, FEMA, TSA, Coast Guard, cybersecurity, Secret Service, and while we continue to negotiate with regard to ICE. I encourage my Republican colleagues to join us in the difficult work of forging agreements rather than abandoning the process in favor of a strictly bipartisan path. I thank the chair and ranking member, and I yield back.
Without objection, the witness's full written testimony will be entered into the record. With that in mind, we would ask you to please summarize your opening statements in 5 minutes. Mr. Scott, the floor is yours.
Chairman Amade, Ranking Member Cuellar, members of the committee, thank you very much for the opportunity to appear here before you today to discuss the President's fiscal year 2027 budget for U.S. Customs and Border Protection. As America's unified border agency, CBP is responsible for knowing and controlling everything and everyone that crosses our international borders. CBP serves Americans every day by keeping bad things and bad people out of our homeland, and for protecting our international supply chains to empower our economy. I'm incredibly proud to represent more than 68,000 dedicated men and women of CBP who continue to perform this vital mission every day, even though they can't count on even being paid right now. It's bewildering to me that we are here today discussing a budget for 2027 when Congress has yet to enact a budget for 2026. 7 months into the fiscal year, CBP has been shut down more than we've been open. One obvious impact of this funding lapse is the thousands of personnel that have gone without pay for extended periods of time. And until Congress acts, I can't even promise them when they're going to get their next paycheck. But the damage goes beyond the missing wages, and it cannot be fixed by merely doing a back pay restoration. Today, many of the services or the service providers that we use have not been paid. In plain terms, that means aircraft, patrol boats, patrol vehicles that need service, they're being parked. Border surveillance equipment that requires maintenance is offline until funding is appropriated. Our confidential human sources are not being paid, and we're at risk of losing some of our intelligence tools that help us secure the border. As World Cup approaches, CBP is unable to provide our personnel the advanced training that we had planned for this event. The negative impacts are not limited to border security. Many of our contractors are small family-run businesses, and now they face the prospect of laying off their employees or going out of business because we can't pay them as we had promised. The problems will compound until this body takes action and funds DHS. I've talked about some of the bad stuff, our current challenges. Let me talk about some of the amazing things that we've done over the last year. Because of President Trump's leadership and the support from Congress through the Working Families Tax Cut Act and the commitment of our personnel, CBP has fundamentally transformed the border, and we have shut down or we have stopped the open borders of the past. As a result, illegal entries between the ports of entry are at record lows, and we have reclaimed control of our borders. The President's budget is designed to build on that progress. It prioritizes critical investments in our personnel, advances in technology, additional assets, and it strengthens our frontline operations, including our counter-narcotics efforts. Our adversaries, though, are increasingly using sophisticated methods like drones to coordinate smuggling of dangerous contraband into the U.S. Our budget provides critical funding for counter unmanned aircraft systems to detect and mitigate these drone threats. It also invests in vital port hardening measures and the modernization of our labs so that we can trace fentanyl and we can do scientific analysis of other contraband. CBP's Automated Commercial Environment, or ACE, is the backbone of U.S. import and export processing. This budget invests in upgrading ACE to significantly improve efficiency, transparency, and enforcement. CBP's workforce, though, is our greatest strength. Building on a year of substantial advances in recruitment and hiring, the President's budget reinforces our commitment to attracting the most qualified candidates we can for CBP. The budget sustains our workforce care programs so that we can take care of the personnel that are under immense pressure in the demands of their job. In closing, the President's fiscal 2027 budget clearly recognizes the challenges confronting CBP in our nation, and it provides the resources we need to address them. It builds on historic investments, allowing CBP to enhance vital operations and pursue new initiatives that support the safety of this great nation. However, the impacts of the continued DHS shutdown are real and they're compounding. The longer this continues, the more those impacts will cascade across our operations, our workforce, and the American public. Despite these challenges, CBP will never forget that we were formed out of the ashes of 9/11, and we remain steadfast in our commitment to secure the borders of the United States. I implore Congress to do the same, pass the Senate DHS funding bill, and work expeditiously to enact a second reconciliation measure by June 1st and provide CBP and ICE the funding that we desperately need. Thank you for your continued support of our mission and our personnel, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Mr. Lyons, the floor is yours for your opening statement.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. Chairman Amade, Ranking Member Cuellar, and distinguished members of the committee. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today and to discuss the vital work of ICE, as well as the importance of sustained funding for our agency. I am deeply proud to stand alongside the dedicated men and women of ICE who work tirelessly every day to enforce our nation's immigration laws and safeguard our communities. Our officers and agents are being villainized for simply upholding and enforcing law. But the bottom line is that they risk their lives every day to serve our nation and protect our families, friends, and neighbors. In recognition of their service and sacrifice, one of my top priorities is to ensure that ICE operates efficiently. I can do that by working with you to ensure we have the resources we need to keep our workforce safe, keep the promises made by President Trump, and meet our obligations to the American people. The ICE workforce is depending on you and I to secure those resources. ICE is at a pivotal moment. The Working Families Tax Cut Act has fundamentally transformed our agency's approach to immigration enforcement. This historic bill enabled ICE to hire 1,000 new personnel, expand our detention and removal capabilities, and invest in the tools necessary to meet the administration's ambitious goals. These upfront, large-scale investments allow us to surge our operations today and lay the groundwork for more efficient and effective processes in the future. While this funding is transformational, it's not a substitute for annual appropriations. The limitations Congress placed on these funds preclude ICE from using reconciliation funding for basic needs, such as paying non-law enforcement personnel, operating basic services within ICE, and conducting criminal investigations into human trafficking, child exploitation, and more. Therefore, the annual budget process remains critical to sustaining ICE base operations and ensuring we meet the emerging challenges that reconciliation funding does not authorize us to do. Under President Trump's administration, we've significantly increased our operational tempo. Since January 20th, we've arrested nearly 457,000 aliens, including 281,000 aliens with criminal histories, 8,400 suspected gang members, and over 1,600 known and suspected terrorists. We've removed roughly 570 individuals. This result is because of your support with annual appropriations combined with the surge capabilities afforded by the Working Families Tax Cut Act. Therefore, to achieve the President's objectives, we request your support for the $5.4 billion for enforcement removal operations in the FY27 budget. As we expand our operations, we remain steadfast in our commitment to detainee safety and well-being. ICE ensures all individuals in our custody are housed in safe, secure, and humane conditions. Our Office of Professional Responsibility conducts regular compliance inspections and oversight to ensure that our facilities meet the highest standards and that we remain fully compliant with our legal and policy requirements. This oversight is funded through the annual appropriations process, not the big, beautiful bill. In FY25, Homeland Security Investigations has conducted more than 4,800 arrests related to child exploitation and rescued nearly 1,500 child victims from ongoing sexual abuse. They've also dismantled more than 2,400 human smuggling operations, including 3,100 convictions. The FY27 budget will provide $2.6 billion to continue HSI's critical investigations. Equally important is the training and professionalism of our workforce. Officer training is and always will be the utmost important to ICE. We have implemented rigorous training programs to focus on our use of force, de-escalation, and detainee care. Our officers and agents are well-trained, well-equipped, and deeply committed to carry out their duties with integrity and respect of the law. Our attorneys are also working around the clock to preserve the rule of law. In FY25, ICE attorneys represented DHS in more than 2 million removal hearings. They've managed more than 1,900 human rights violation cases and over 4,000 national security cases nationwide. The FY27 budget includes $8.7 million to address the workload administrative needs. ICE is also looking for $1.6 billion for our mission support staff. These dedicated professionals maintain our infrastructure, ensure our workforce has the support they need, and are stewards of all ICE resources. In closing, I'm sitting before you today asking for your support for our FY27 budget. The combined resources provided in the Working Family Tax Cut Act and our annual appropriations are essential to ensuring ICE is capable of executing its critical mission both now and the future. Again, thank you for allowing me this time to speak with you today. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr. Edlow. The floor is yours for your opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Amadei, Ranking Member Cuellar, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the fiscal year 2027 budget request for U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. I am honored to represent the dedicated men and women of USCIS and appreciate your partnership as we work to protect American citizens, uphold the rule of law, and safeguard our homeland. Under President Trump's leadership, USCIS has made historic progress in restoring accountability and security to our legal immigration system. Excuse me. Over the past year, we have focused on combating fraud, ending exploitation of immigration programs, upholding the integrity of the naturalization process, and protecting American communities and workers. I'm thrilled to continue this work with Secretary Mullen at the helm of the department now. USCIS's fiscal health is strong. In fiscal year 2025, we collected $7.5 billion in fee revenue, exceeding forecasts, and our carryover balance is well above targeted levels. We continue to manage resources responsibly, ensuring uninterrupted operations and supporting mission-critical programs. A key component of these efforts is E-Verify, which helps employers nationwide confirm work eligibility and support national security. E-Verify has more than 1.4 million employers enrolled, and nearly 44 million cases were run through the system last year alone. In fiscal year 2025, it prevented fraudulent use of over 10,000 Social Security numbers and issued 25,000 not employed authorized confirmations. Employer satisfaction remains high, and we are requesting $113 million to maintain and enhance this essential system. We have also implemented the Working Families Tax Cut Act, signed into law by President Trump in July 2025. This legislation introduced new fees and provisions to strengthen the integrity of our legal immigration system. Through its implementation, USCIS has closed loopholes, limited improper fee waivers, and reinforced accountability. In closing, our commitment to integrity, security, and service remains unwavering. But I would be remiss if I did not mention that as the longest shutdown in history continues, USCIS strongly asked the House to pass the Senate DHS funding bill and work expeditiously to enact a second reconciliation measure by June 1st to provide sustained funding to our partners at ICE and CBP. We are dedicated to deterring and disrupting fraud, optimizing resources, and strictly adhering to immigration law. I thank the committee for its attention to our mission and for its ongoing support of USCIS. On a personal note, I want to thank Mr. Chairman, you, for your work and your support to the nation and to USCIS, and congratulate you on your upcoming retirement. I welcome your questions and look forward to continued collaboration.
Thank you, Mr. Edlow. Let me translate that. You guys are happier than hell to see me in the rearview mirror. But at this point, I don't have any feelings or any pride left, so can't do anything to me, huh? I'm going to turn to Mr. Cuellar for his questioning initially, but I do want to put this little footnote in since I'm sure there are other people watching. I know the OMB language where people who are the agencies most directly affected saying, please pass a bill that has a 0 in front of your agency, and pass a reconciliation bill which has no oversight reforms for the lessons that we've learned from the last one is phenomenally interesting from my part. Not personally directed at any of you, but I hope somebody's, listening on the interweb or whatever the heck you new people call that stuff. Mr. Cuellar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Scott, first of all, thank you for your service and your men and women that work for y'all. I have a couple questions dealing with the border wall. Back under what I call Trump 1, I was able to get about 6 exceptions down there for a border wall. Now, I'm also suggesting that we add certain exceptions to the Laredo area, to the Zapata area, and to Big Bend. I understand that y'all put a pause on, but there are certain areas that are very sensitive, and by that I'm talking about, we do know that the numbers went down, and congratulations, 96% gone down. Laredo before that was the second lowest crossing that we had during those high numbers. So the numbers went down, and all of that happened without a single foot of border wall or even a buoy. It was policy, repercussions at the border that helped and working with our partners. Now that we're looking at $46.5 billion of border wall money, I do have certain concerns. First of all, the waivers that we're saying late last year, they use Biden-era migration stats for their justification, not current ones, but past numbers. I disagree. I did not approve of open borders. I was very strong against it. Now my communities are, first of all, the waivers that we're saying late last year, they use Biden-era migration stats for their justification, not current ones, but past numbers. I disagree. I did not approve of open borders. I was very strong against it. Now my communities are concerned about the construction and the potential flood risk impact to drinking water and threats to public lands that we have. Mr. Chairman, with your, I would ask for unanimous support to enter into the record the executive summary report by Dr. Mark Tompkins, released on March 10th, 2026, which analyzes the threat to human life, property, critical infrastructure by the proposed wall and buoy system to the Laredo and the communities along the Zapata area. I would ask for unanimous support.
Seeing no objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So a couple of things. One, I don't know if y'all have seen that report. I would ask if you can work with your partners, International Boundary Water Commission, the Army Corps, and get us a response to that. If you disagree that there is no threats to it, tell us why on that. And then the other thing I would ask, Mr. Scott, is what is the current operational justification for a border wall in Laredo and Zapata, even Big Bend also? When Congress can see, and when can we expect to see an updated border security improvement plan? As you know, and there are other times we used to go on what you all wanted. I would ask for that also. And then more importantly, would ask if you would commit working with myself. I know there's a gentleman, I think his name is Paul Enriquez. I don't know if I've met him before, but he's doing a lot of it. We just want some input with it. Like I said, last time I asked for certain exceptions. We got them under what I call Trump 1, and even SpaceX got an exception to that as also. So I just want to ask you if you can commit with us to sit down. And I know you're very hands-on, and I appreciate your relationship and Ron's relationship, and look forward working with the on those border wall, I won't call them exceptions, but concerns that we have.
Well, first and foremost, thank you for your willingness to communicate and work with us over the last, I don't know how many years. Those partnerships and those conversations have added a lot of value, and I'm fully committed to continuing that going forward. And we do work with the local communities. We look at the environment. We work with the agencies you just mentioned and even more. As a matter of fact, after this hearing later today, I'm flying down to the border to have some of these specific types of conversations, not in Laredo, but another specific border area. I'm firmly committed to making sure that we continue that going forward. I would be remiss, though, if I didn't highlight that border security is an enduring requirement. The illegal immigration ebbs and flows, but the foreign terrorist organizations just south of our border that are bringing threats into this country constantly use illegal immigration to create gaps to bring people into the United States. That border wall, going back into the 90s, CBP, Border Patrol, has worked on it, perfected it. That is critical because the reason the numbers have gone down now, a lot of it is policy, but we have almost 11,000 Department of War personnel on the border helping us create a level of deterrence. And that is not a sustainable model. The personnel salaries, that's the most expensive part of the border security. Building the border wall is actually an investment that saves American taxpayers money, but we're going to do it smartly, and I commit to having conversations with you and others on how we do that.
Thank you. By the way, where are the Border Patrol agents? Are they still doing interior enforcement? Because I've talked to a lot of them. They want to be Border Patrol, not interior. I would assume those folks are back at the border?
So border security, as you know, it's a team sport. We have to have consequences. You can't just let somebody run across the river and then get away. So we continue to work with ICE and our other partners, but those are targeted enforcement operations. The vast majority of CBP personnel or Border Patrol agents are actually on the border and or airports at ports of entry. But we still do support ICE operations in targeted manner.
Yes, and we'll talk about how many numbers are still away from the border at a later time. The other thing I have before I go to Mr. Lyons is the questions on checkpoints. I know, the checkpoint in Laredo, I know there's money there, and we're going to work on that. We did talk to your team. A couple of things I said, if they don't put enough commercial lanes there, that checkpoint will be the fourth largest port in the whole country. I know there's an expansion, there's money there. I want to work with you, but the only thing I ask, and you know this very well, you got to get the risk analysis, the equipment that are used at the ports of entry. Border Patrol has a different mindset, but the more we can do that, and we talk to your team, I would ask you to do that, because as we expand the World Trade Bridge from 8 lanes, commercial lanes, to 18 lanes, and Columbia from 8 to 16, we're the largest port of entry, 18,000 trailers. You can put all the trucks from El Paso down to Brownsville. They don't even match what they do in Laredo. We would ask you to just do this once in a generation checkpoint, and we'll follow up. I don't want to go. I just want to get your commitment that you'll work with us on that.
You have my commitment, sir.
All right. Thank you. And I'm glad you got Ron with you also. He's a good one, too. I like career people. Mr. Lyons, again, thank you for your men and women. I also don't believe in defunding ICE, but I think we need to have some reforms, and we talked about it yesterday. First of all, I want to thank you, Chairman. You and your staff and myself, we sat down with some of the ICE folks when we brought the South Texas builders, Mario Guerrero and the other folks that came in. We want to thank you because it looks like now, instead of focusing the work site right now in South Texas and other areas like Laredo, you're focusing on criminals and criminal elements. So I want to say that because that affected the housing situation in Laredo. So I want to start off with thank you so much. The other thing I want to bring up is what we talked about is, and I don't know what term to use. You don't like ICE warehouses. But I do have one that's coming up, or they're looking at San Antonio, and another one maybe in McAllen. What we need, I just need a commitment that you will work with us and the local community, because you got to have local community. In Laredo, we're building a $280 million immigration processing center, and the community has worked with us. But in other areas, San Antonio, the mayor, the county judge, everybody, the county commissioner are all up in arms. Same thing in McAllen. I need your commitment that you'll work with us to address those immigration. I won't call them ICE. Sure. I'll still call them ICE warehouses, but whatever term y'all might want to use.
Yes, sir. No, yeah, you have my commitment. And first, let me just say thank you again for the partnership with the South Texas builders. Working with yourself and your office, that able to expand the HSI image program to ensure that builders and business owners are hiring the correct people, and also helping us identify criminal organizations has been huge for South Texas. In regards to the San Antonio facility, we did purchase one. It's actually not a detention center, it's a processing center. So it's only going to be hold up to 500 to 1,000 people, scalable. So it's not going to be a long-term detention center, it's going to be a processing center that'll just have processing stations, availability to have immigration court there, et cetera. We are working with local and state now. Unfortunately, a lot of the people that have been working with us, those elected officials and the buyers and sellers, they're also having threats, stalks. We've had several sites that have already been, offline because of arson and things like that. And in regards to Laredo, Secretary Mullen's taken a direct approach and looking at all options. So
You mean McAllen?
I'm sorry, McAllen.
Yeah.
So we are
Laredo,
going.
we're doing that processing center, and we're good.
Right.
We're good on that.
Yeah, no, McAllen. So Secretary Mullen's just looking over the whole detention plan, and he's going to make an informed decision on where he wants to move forward on locations. But we have purchased that one in San Antonio. Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you. I know my time's over. I'll just ask one question, sir. Why, we've hired a whole bunch of ICE agents, HSI, Border Patrol over the years that I supported hiring more of those agents. Why do we need 200 agents specifically for your agency? What is it that ICE or other folks are telling that you feel there's a need to create a new law enforcement part of it in your agency?
Thank you, Mr. Cuellar. No one's telling us no, but with all due respect to my colleague, Mr. Lyons, HSI has a very large portfolio. What I'm trying to create here is a very narrow criminal investigation branch that is going to focus specifically on immigration fraud and entitlement fraud that falls within our purview. It is specific for criminal investigators. It's to build up that relationship with U.S. attorneys. We have, for the amount of immigration fraud that we have seen, that we have uncovered, that I know has been in the system for many, many years, there is a very small number, hardly any prosecutions we've ever seen. This is to really focus on that. It's very, very narrow.
Well, and I know my time, and I want to thank the chairman. Could you follow up, because we're concerned about training. We're concerned, we don't want the same thing, where we left some of the training. There's a lot of questions that we have, and my time's up, and I want to thank the chairman. But I do want to follow up with some of those questions.
Mr. Cuellar, I'm happy to follow up. I will just say very briefly on training, every special agent that we will be hiring will either have gone or is presently going through the criminal investigator training program, which every special agent in the federal government goes through. And then we have I don't want to get the number of weeks wrong, I think it's about a 9-week special agent training specific to the work that's going to be done at USCIS. So there is, But I'm happy to follow up with you.
We'll follow up. Thank you, three gentlemen. Thank you.
Is there anything else, Mr. Cuellar?
No, sir. Well, I do have
So in full disclosure, Mr. Cuellar just used Ms. DeLauro's time, and since I didn't ask any questions, he used about half of mine too. And so he said before, pardon me, you're not recognized. He says before, hey, since we're only doing run round, can I have an extra minute? And I'm like, sure, Henry, whatever you want. And so, because he's a leader, by the way, you guys need to work on the end of your testimony. Thank you again for pretending like you're sorry to see me go. We're only going to do one round still, but everybody's going to get 8 minutes for the round. Now, I know if I did that before Mr. Cuellar talked, that'd be a 20-minute deal. So, Sheriff, you're recognized for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll make this quick. First, I want to set the record straight. The reason we are here talking about the 26 budget is not because of the House of Representatives. We passed 12 appropriations. This body passed 12 appropriation bills before the end of the year, and then sent it to the Senate. The Senate was unable to do their job because we couldn't find 7 Democrats in the Senate that would vote to overcome the cloture rule of needing 60 votes in the Senate to pass a bill. That's why DHS is unfunded. Not because of this body. We passed a bipartisan bill across the House floor to fund you all and the men and women that work for you, and to protect this country, particularly looking at the upcoming year with FIFA, the American 250 celebrations are going to be going on. All of these events that you all are going to be responsible for protecting us from, along with Secret Service, TSA, Coast Guard, the whole DHS. So I want to make sure we understand that that's where the responsibility for this lies, is in the Senate. And I call on Senator Thune to jettison that 60-vote cloture rule and just take up our appropriations bill and vote it across with a simple majority. That's what we need to do. We need to quit playing this filibuster game that they play over there in the Senate. They could have passed what we passed here, which was a bipartisan appropriation bill. In fact, we passed it 4 times. Now, the idea that we're going to leverage public safety and defund ICE and ICE and CBP and TSA and others so that we can negotiate on ICE policy and procedures is atrocious to me as a former law enforcement officer. Now, one thing that I am very happy about, Mr. Lyons, I know you all have gone full bore into the 287G program, and I want to make this point. 287G, which I ran when I had I not only had the police side of the organization, but I had the corrections side. We had a great jail enforcement program under 287G. We safely took individuals off of our streets and handed them over to ICE for deportation in Jacksonville, Florida. It's a great program. So we didn't have to have ICE officers out in the community being confronted by not the illegal immigrants that they're going after, but by these paid provocateurs. I don't even call them protesters. They're paid provocateurs. They're going out there and causing all this disruption. 39 states you guys are in now. It's over 1,600 agencies that are working with you. And guess what? No violence problems in those areas. And so I want to make that point that this is a great program. In fact, one of your predecessors actually said it was the best thing since sliced bread. So my question is, I want to make sure that we have the funding that we need to continue ICE 287G processes. Can you talk a little bit about that? And what do you think you're going to need in 27?
Well, sir, first off, I just want to say thank you for recognizing the 287G program, because like you said, it is a force multiplier, and we would much rather have individuals arrested, detained, taken into custody inside a safe, secure location with the help of our federal partners. And the jail enforcement model does exactly that. So for our under appropriations with OB3 funding, we had approximately $1.1 billion for 287G. A lot of that does go for staffing, right? We're able to assist a lot of the smaller jurisdictions, smaller municipalities and sheriffs that have budget shortfalls in their area. We can provide them with overtime funding for new officers, as well as vehicles and equipment, which is a huge piece of that partnership, is the fact that since they are taking the steps to work with ICE and help us work in the community, that we're going to make sure that they're whole as well. So we've been able to do that. For the obligated for year to date, we're at $305 million now. So we are doing good for 287G. But one thing really sort of highlights the fact that we're up over 1,088% increased MOUs that have been signed with local jurisdictions. And if we've learned anything, it's that the cooperation with state and local agencies is a game changer. To your point, locations that don't have any protests or problems, it's because we have the local cooperation. We don't have to be on the street. They're out there in the jails.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I want to follow up on that with the idea of the detention facilities. I want to know what the mix is between facility and permanent structures that we're building and scalable, what I think is a scalable program that y'all have, which is accessing local jails and state prisons for these folks to house them instead of building big permanent structures, because we're not always going to have this problem. Eventually, we will deport the majority of the illegals, and we'll get back to normal needs. And so I think it's more important that we have something that's scalable versus building a big infrastructure that to take care of the millions and millions of illegals that we now have in the country. Once we've gotten rid of them, deported them, we need something scalable, I think. And so can you tell me what the mix is on that, and where do you see this going in the future?
Yes, sir. Well, the very first thing on that is the beginning of your statement was the fact that we rely heavily upon our sheriffs and local jurisdictions that do support us in those cooperative areas. So we're going to continue to keep those 287G partners to include intergovernmental agency agreements with them. The reason for the larger scale of infrastructure for the detention was the fact that there are so many jurisdictions, like in New York and New Jersey, we don't have any partnerships. And it's not because local leadership doesn't want to engage with ICE, it's the fact that a lot of times by state law, they're not allowed to work with us. The new facilities that are being built are actually scalable.
So these are sanctuary states?
Yes, sir. So the new facilities that are being built are actually scalable. They're not fixed. We have the ability to bring them down or bring them back up dependent on the action. But when I was here testifying last year, one of the commitments I had was to reduce the footprint when it came to the amount of exorbitant contracts that we have out there right now with a lot of our private facilities. And what we're looking for is a more sensible approach when it comes to being self-sufficient and being able to control our own standards within that, but control the price point. And unfortunately, a lot of the smaller sheriffs, I'm sure someone told you, to come up to ICE standard, it's just too expensive for them to retrofit their facilities that were built in the 80s and 90s. So through the larger program, we're going to be able to scale those down based on what the actual needs are.
Okay, and those dollars are the reconciliation dollars. Are they being used for this program as well?
We use the reconciliation OB3 funding for the initial front load startup. But then for what we're asking for in FY27 is be funded for 41,500 beds. And then we'll be able to scale up and down with the detention facilities.
Okay. And we're keeping up with ADP, average daily population needs now?
Yes, sir. Okay. So we're actually in a surplus right now because our partners at the Department of State have been really helpful with us on expediting removals, especially when it comes to recalcitrant countries where we have problems with travel documents. So our removal process and our increase in our removal proceedings have led to that no longer having a shortfall in beds, but having a stockpile.
Thank you. And if I could, very briefly, Mr. Edlow, USCIS, back in October, we had delays in getting H-2A workers into the country. And we had crops that were literally being turned under in the field because we didn't have people to pick them. And I know that was a labor backup because of the shutdown, and then that backed you up. And have we resolved that now, the backlog?
Congressman, excuse me, I'm not aware of any backlog at USCIS with regard to H-2A. My understanding is processing time remains around 5 to 7 days. Once we get the information from labor and the application is filed with us, we turn it around within 5 to 7 days. If you're hearing something else, please let me know, and we'd love to work with you on it.
Okay, thank you. I'll get with you. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Escobar, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member, and thanks to our witnesses for being here today. Before I get into my questions, I would be remiss if I didn't say that I am very glad that Kristi Noem, Corey Lewandowski, and Greg Bovino are no longer a part of the Department of Homeland Security. The way that they engaged in our communities has been an abomination, and it is my hope that the wreckage which they created, which is immeasurable, can be addressed and that we can go forward in a different way. So I had to get that off my chest. Mr. Scott, I've asked for a meeting with you, and I know this is a tough week, but I really would appreciate a one-on-one meeting with you, my team, your team. Can we make that happen in the next week or so?
Yes, ma'am, within this next week. I'll be out of town after this meeting until Tuesday, but I'll
Okay.
get with you. Yes,
And we're happy to work with you. Just would really appreciate the opportunity to sit down with you.
of course.
Thank you. Acting Director Lyons, I want to thank you for the time that you gave me and my team yesterday. I think it was a productive and fruitful conversation. And much of what we talked about is Camp East, Montana. It is the largest immigration detention facility in the country. It is privately run. It's $1.24 billion. And I have been sounding the alarm about that facility and that contractor for some time now. I am glad that Acquisition Logistics will no longer be the contractor going forward. We are hoping to continue our oversight, our work on oversight as the new contractor situates itself. And to the chairman's point, thank you for committing to get us the contract with Acquisition Logistics. I'd like it if the chair, the ranking member, and I could have the contract, the new contract with Amentum, please.
Yes, ma'am, 100%.
Okay.
And we're committed to making sure that we get you that. That contract will be fully in place by April 17th.
Okay.
Fully funded, staffed. But just to the original statement of work, we inherited that from the Department of War. And unfortunately, under the FAR Act Part 2, they had listed proprietary information. So I just would refer any questions on the original contract back to the Department of War. Was the reason for the delay on the original?
Will,
If I might, if you want to redact it, we're not going to the Pentagon to get answers about ICE stuff.
We'll take care of that for you.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yep.
thank you, Chairman. Will there be, I'm assuming there will not be a similar issue with the Amentum contract?
No, ma'am.
Okay, and we can get that in a timely manner?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And we have started to receive the answers to our letters from last fall and earlier this year. So I appreciate that we're starting to get those answers. But as we continue our oversight responsibilities and have more questions, can we expect responses to our questions in a more timely manner than existed under Secretary Noem?
Yes, ma'am. It was, and I think yesterday as we talked, I think my team was actually sending over responses in real time. So we have increased our legislative affair staff, and we are expediting, answering, and getting those all back in a more timely fashion. So you do have the commitment that you'll receive those answers.
Okay, I appreciate that. And as I mentioned, both on the phone, in my letters to members of this committee, to the chairman, to the ranking member, the issues at Camp East, Montana have been horrific. And frequently, staff on the ground is very dismissive when I raise those issues directly with them. And we have an obligation to treat people in a humane manner and to make sure that we are living up to federal standards. And the challenges with Camp East, Montana have been laid out by our own federal oversight agencies. So I am not the only one who has seen these issues and who has sounded the alarm. But we now have in my community another set of ICE facilities that are going up. The Department of Homeland Security has purchased 3 warehouses in the city of Socorro, Texas, a population of 36,000 people. Those 3 warehouses are going to house 8,500 human beings. Those structures are meant to hold goods, Those structures are meant to hold things, not people. And the city of Socorro their city council has passed a moratorium on any DHS facilities. They do not have the water infrastructure, the wastewater infrastructure, the emergency services infrastructure. They don't have enough for their own community. But now to have facilities, potentially have facilities for 8,600 human beings and staff, they are very alarmed. There were hundreds of members of their community who attended the city council meeting to oppose these new facilities. Local leaders are uniformly opposed to any new facilities. And Mr. Lyons, the County of El Paso has struggled to get any information from ICE. They've had to sue in order to try to get information. Is ICE or DHS still planning on proceeding with the 3 warehouses?
Well, ma'am, Secretary Mullen is, like I said in my statement before, he is looking at our whole detention plan. We're making decisions based on if we're going to move forward with those locations. But what I can tell you is, and hopefully when we do go on our trip down to Camp East, to take the opportunity to show you exactly what those facilities will be. I know I've said I don't like when people use the term warehouse, but it's once you see what the layout will be, it's not going to be any type of cages in it. That it's actually to be retrofitted to become a detention facility, one that will actually be proud of, one that will actually have standards held in a humane way. So I welcome the chance when we go down there to show you exactly what we actually plan to do.
Mr. Lyons, I am going to urge you to reconsider. The community is uniformly opposed to this. As I mentioned, a city of 36,000 people does not have the infrastructure for a facility of the magnitude that DHS is wanting to build. And there has been zero community consultation, zero community involvement, community engagement. Before there's any forward movement, would you commit to meeting with local leaders to hear directly from them?
Yes, ma'am. And Secretary Mullen's committed to ensuring that we have not only interaction with yourself and other members of this committee, but local leadership on the ground, state, local, municipality level, to have that community engagement, to have those discussions.
I appreciate that. I'm eager to see that happen. One last question. There have been multiple deaths at Camp East, Montana. One of those deaths, Geraldo Lunas Campos, died in ICE custody on January 3rd of this year. The El Paso County Medical Examiner determined that was a homicide. I've read the details of the report. It's pretty horrific. What is the status of that investigation?
So, ma'am, once we had that information provided to us, we went ahead and referred that case. That case now is with the FBI. So I can't speak to an investigation, but the FBI is investigating that.
Okay, so it's no longer at OPR.
It's with the FBI, ma'am. Yes,
okay,
ma'am.
and I hope that you will evaluate the fact as you are thinking through these facilities and how they are privately run, that the staff on site lied initially about the accounts of that, and there really needs to be. I'd like to engage in a conversation with you about that.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chairman, I know my time is up. Thank you. I appreciate it. I yield back.
You're welcome, and your time wasn't as far up as Mr. Cuellar's was, so you're being a leader on that. Mr. Newhouse, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for your generosity in allowing people to go over time. It's very important stuff. Gentlemen, thank you. Mr. Scott, Mr. Lyons, Mr. Edlow, thanks for being here and appearing before this committee, but also before the American public to talk about some very important issues that everybody's thinking about. Mr. Edlow, welcome back to the House. It's good to have you here. My first question I would ask direct to you, Director. At the end of fiscal year 2025, USCIS reported a net backlog of 6.29 million cases, an increase of more than 65% from the previous year, with expectations that additional enhanced screening requirements for all visa applicants may further strain processing times.
This is a concern, particularly as it relates to our American farmers and businesses that rely on foreign workers to work during peak seasons to fill their labor needs. So a couple questions there, if I may. What assessments did DHS make before implementing these policies about the likely impact on visa processing times and seasonal labor flows? Could you describe what resources USCIS is allocating to address this potential backlog and ensure timely processing of visa applications? And then on top of that, do you have plans to review and utilize authorities available to your agency to streamline visa processing, such as waiving in-person interviews for returning workers? Could you briefly touch on what you've done to date to help expedite visa processing?
Certainly, Mr. Newhouse, and thank you so much. When I got back to USCIS this time around, the asylum backlog, if I may, was 1.5 million cases. When I had left in 2020 at the end of Trump 1, I thought we had a bad backlog at about 400,000 cases. So the increase on the backlog over the time that the Biden administration is something that we are still trying to deal with, but also trying to address understanding who these individuals were and kind of making sure that we have all that done. We are utilizing new screening and vetting through technology. We're working on some AI tools as well as other things in order to better streamline the screening and vetting. I will say, with the asylum backlog, I know it's not exactly what you asked, but with the asylum backlog, while it was 1.5 when I got here, it is now 1.4. So we have actually made some progress in the last year. It's a little, but as far as the workers, especially the farm workers, as I said to Mr. Rutherford, I am not tracking a backlog in that group at all. In fact, we are processing H-2A visas within a 5 to 7 day window from the time that the application is filed. And as I said, if you're hearing something else, please let me know so that we can address that. But ultimately, my charge here is to make sure that we are not cutting corners, that we are taking the adjudication seriously and not getting, I've made it very clear. I believe there was a get to yes policy before, run to the bottom. My policy is not get to yes, it's not get to no. It's get to the right decision with all of the facts that we have in front of us. And so we are absolutely taking into consideration the needs of those that are petitioning, as well as the general economic needs of what you're describing. But at the end of the day, screening and vetting will be the primary focus of what we're doing. I don't see that as incompatible with getting these applications done timely. I agree, application times, processing times on certain applications have gone up over the last fiscal year. What I would say, and I've been saying it a lot recently, is I consider this to be short-term pain, which is going to really lead to long-term gain in the fair and proper processing of immigration.
No, I appreciate that. We're not asking you to cut corners, and I do look forward to working with your office, as we have heard of some instances where there's been what seem to be unduly delays.
Let's discuss it after this. Absolutely. I'm happy to talk to you about it.
Thank you. Thank you. Turning to Mr. Lyons, Mr. Scott, what I would characterize the previous administration's disastrous border policies exacerbated the fentanyl crisis that's plagued the United States, including communities in my district in Central Washington. We know that the agencies at the Department of Homeland Security, including CBP and ICE and the Coast Guard, have played a critical role in seizing illicit fentanyl and cracking down on drug trafficking organizations. So Commissioner Scott and Director Lyons, or Acting Director Lyons to be precise, your respective testimonies highlighted that CBP seized, I believe it was 721,000 pounds of illicit drugs. I seized nearly 1 million pounds of fentanyl and precursor chemicals in the last year. This is just phenomenal work, and I applaud you. I stand ready to work with you to help your agency to continue this kind of successful effort. But the question I have, could you briefly speak further to how your budget request will enhance initiatives to keep our communities safe from fentanyl and other illicit drugs?
I'll go first. Yeah, I'll touch on it real quickly. Part of that, the actual weight is almost irrelevant. We're talking about keeping it off the streets. So it shouldn't be the higher the number, the more success. What we're looking at is improving our inspections, and we have. The reduction in illegal immigration has resulted in tens of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands by now, of increased hours of enforcement time. The border wall that we're building out allows every single agent to be more effective, and it allows us to shift personnel to the coast to look for tunnels and to take out the drones that are coming across. We want to prevent illegal narcotics from getting into the United States, not just seize them when they come. And I would argue, just if you look at our ports of entry, our inspection, the percentage of vehicles and baggage and commercial vehicles that we're inspecting is increasing on a daily basis, and that's a win for America.
Great. Just real quickly, Mr. Lyons, I got one more thing I want to ask you.
Sir, just really quickly, if you look, again, Mr. Scott said it earlier that it's a team sport. CBP secured the border, so it allows HSI, Homeland Security Investigations, to really work with our international partners, and that's what we're focused on. Especially states like yours in California, we do see the impact of the flow of precursor drugs coming from the Indo-Pacific region, and we're committed with the countries of Australia and New Zealand to really focus on that, specifically on working with the Coast Guard to intercept those before they even get to the port. So what we're looking for is that, having a robust Homeland Security task force, which we've now established in almost every state, working with state, local partners and streamlining that to make sure we focus not only just here domestically, but internationally with our partners where we know where that's coming from.
Well, thank you. If I could get to one more question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Cuellar, please proceed.
Just following precedent. So as many of us on this committee are aware, beyond immigration enforcement, ICE also serves as a critical federal asset to detecting and dismantling the transnational criminal networks, targeting narcotics smuggling, human trafficking, gang violence, and cyber and financial crimes. ICE's Homeland Security investigations operations also have been a leading agency targeting child exploitation. Which, according to your testimony, Director, has led to more than, I think, almost 5,000 arrests related to child exploitations, nearly 1,500 child victims rescued, and over 3,100 convictions related to human trafficking. So has the shutdown, Director, impacted your operations in detecting, dismantling, arresting, convicting the bad actors involved in this heinous operation of child trafficking and exploitation?
Yes, sir, it does. And there's a misinformation that with the Big Beautiful Bill, ICE is completely funded, but they're specifically through regulation that can only be used for certain tasks. It doesn't involve Homeland Security investigations. Everything from having vehicles with gas in the vehicles to deploying agents TDY. That's an impact because we just don't have that funding. On top of that, our critical intelligence network is a lot contract based, and we're just not able to pay for those contracts right now. Our victim advocates, victim specialists, we just don't have that. So while we always hear that ICE is flush with money, maybe for detention and removal, but not for the critical things that are actually protecting Americans every day. And one of the most vital things we do is child exploitation.
Yeah, appreciate that. We'll do what we can to help you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the balance of my time.
You don't have any to yield back, but thank you anyhow. The gentlelady from Illinois, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm so glad that we're finally having this oversight hearing because the American people need to understand what's going on at DHS. So I'll jump right in. Mr. Lyons, how many people have died in ICE custody on your watch?
44, ma'am. 25 this fiscal year.
Okay. We understand that ICE records list 45 under your leadership and 49 total since President Trump took office. I would encourage you to remain current on those lists. And how does that death rate on your watch compare to your predecessors?
So, ma'am, it's, to your point, it is the highest because we do have the highest amount in detention that ICE has ever had since its inception in 2003.
Okay, so what I hear you testifying before your committee before this committee is that ICE has never had a deadlier year since 2025, and more people are dying than ever before. And with the death rate so far this year, you're on track to break that record. And yet we've not had a real explanation in the Congress or the American people why more people are dying. Just simply saying that there's more detainees. I mean, you have more officers, you have more resources. And so that's not, in my opinion, a valid rationale for why the death rate would be increasing. So the San Francisco Chronicle really recently worked with medical experts to review the deaths and found that, quote, people routinely died in custody without ever being seen by doctors, even as they begged for help. Mr. Lyons, does ICE have any specific internal goals or policies regarding deaths in custody?
Yes, ma'am, we do. And ICE alone has spent almost $500 million last fiscal year that this committee has given us to ensure that people have the proper medical care. Everyone has a complete physical within 14 days and is seen by a medical professional in the first 24 hours.
Right,
So,
that's about medical treatment. My question is about policies or goals regarding deaths.
well, as far as what, ma'am? We do
Do you have any internal policies or goals regarding the number of deaths in custody?
Yeah, well, we don't, no death is what we want. We don't want
Is that
anyone
an
to die in
official
custody.
policy of ICE?
To no one die in custody? I hope that's a policy of anyone that has to be tasked with
I
detaining
hope
somebody.
it's not a policy. I'm just asking, are there any policies
No.
within your agency? No. Okay. So that's something that perhaps we can work on together, because I believe, particularly given the death rate, that should be codified. Maybe a memorandum from your office to all ICE employees. Maybe a memorandum to your grantees, Core Civic and the GEO Group. You know what I mean? We are seeing significant numbers coming out of those contracted ICE facilities, and that should be something that's communicated from you as ICE leadership to those under your watch. We're familiar with NBC News reporting from this week, calling out the decreased transparency regarding circumstances of immigrant deaths in custody. NBC News reports that ICE has chosen not to report details on deaths in custody since mid-February. What specifically is stopping you from continuing to report during a shutdown?
No, ma'am, we are reporting. We are working on that timeline. We are reporting up to Congress and as well as to putting it on our public website when we are.
Okay, so when's the most recent report that you're aware of?
I'll give it to staff and get you that, ma'am.
Okay, because as you can tell, this committee is only aware of the NBC News reporting, which on the public website lists mid-February. And in my opinion, it is unacceptable that this transparency is being deemed non-essential. When an NBC News reporter asked why you had stopped posting information about your investigations into deaths in custody, a department spokesperson said that the delay was, in quote, due to non-essential reporting. Mr. Lyons, is there a legal basis for that claim that investigating deaths in custody is non-essential?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Let's work together to change that and to update that public reporting as soon as possible, perhaps by the end of the week.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. Now, one man died when his HIV was left untreated for months. Another man died after detention staff saw him have seizures, yet waited over an hour to call an ambulance. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the San Francisco Chronicle article titled, "In ICE Custody, Medical Delays Drive Record Deaths." Thank you. Thank you. We understand that under the Trump administration, detention watchdog agencies have been gutted. How many staff are employed at ICE's Office of Detention Oversight?
I can get you that specific number, ma'am. One thing that we have increased, though, is we haven't gone back to increasing what we have for our detention standards. So if I can go back to
Mr. Acting
Lyons.
Director, yes. We are familiar with the detention standards. Those have been widely publicized. What is not publicized is what's going on at the watchdog agencies who are in charge of enforcing said standards. And listen, if the office exists on paper and there are no staff, well, then we know that accountability is not being provided to the officers. And so please do get back that information, and our office would be delighted to offer the American people that transparency.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so perhaps you might just want to put out a press release with that information. Okay, so the San Francisco Chronicle's analysis confirms what we've witnessed firsthand on my oversight visits. A few months ago, I went to the Miami Correctional Facility in Bunker Hill, Indiana, where I met individuals who told me it took months to receive medication refills, including life-threatening illnesses like diabetes. Others reported being left unattended with infected boils and others really serious conditions. Mr. Lyons, these are things that we saw with our own eyes. And as a nurse, I know what medical negligence looks like. I was devastated, but I wasn't surprised when I learned that a detainee at that facility died shortly after my visit. And ICE is not the only DHS agency with chilling disregard for human life. So, Mr. Scott, your Border Patrol agents abandoned a nearly blind refugee alone on the street in the middle of winter in upstate New York, and a medical examiner ruled his death a homicide. Mr. Scott, has CBP or Border Patrol launched any internal investigation of the actions of these Border Patrol officers implicated in this homicide?
I'm aware of that incident. The facts are a little bit in dispute, but yes, that is being investigated, I believe, by OPR and I believe OIG, but I'll have to get back to you on the OIG piece.
So the OIG is the department?
I believe so.
Okay, but nothing internally within CBP?
No, that's OPR, I'm sorry. Office of Professional Responsibilities is CBP. They will always do the administrative procedural investigation piece, but anything criminal goes to OIG or
Which
to FBI.
a homicide would be criminal?
Correct.
Okay. But the FBI is not involved, as Mr. Lyons testified, with respect to their alleged homicide. So for this case,
I can't state on what he testified to. I'm just telling you that internally it's OPR.
Yes.
And in this case, I believe it's OIG, but I'm not going to testify on behalf of OIG, so I'll have to get back with you.
Okay, but you're saying that, to your knowledge, the FBI is not involved in the CBP?
In this specific case, I do not believe that.
Excellent. Well, actually, at the end of the day, it is clear that the American people, American citizens, are not safe from your agents. During Operation Midway Blitz, which happened in my home state of Illinois, CBP deployed specialized tactical units called BORTAC and BORSTAR into residential areas in Illinois. These units are equipped for military-style counterterrorism operations. They're untrained and totally unfit for civilian law enforcement in densely populated areas with families, schools, and churches. And your agents use tear gas, pepper balls, tasers, and physical force against civilians, including protesters, journalists, and clergy. Dozens of people, including U.S. citizens like Renee Good and Alex Preddy, have been shot or killed by ICE and Border Patrol agents since you both took office. And in many cases, body cam footage and other forensic evidence often contradicts your agency's versions of events. And over, we've seen no consequences. You can't or won't rein in your agents, and you are obstructing state and local investigations. From record-breaking deaths in custody to the killing of U.S. citizens at the hands of federal agents, it could not possibly be clearer that your agencies are out of control. The patterns of reckless, incompetent, cruel, illegal, corrupt, and unconstitutional behavior across your agencies and the total lack of accountability to Congress, the American people, and the Constitution, in my opinion, these are leadership problems, not funding problems. Last summer, your agencies got $140 billion in the big ugly bill. And you're obviously not using it to surge any kind of basic medical care to detainees or adequate training to your agents. Meanwhile, I'm still waiting for answers to basic questions I asked both of you in January, 2 months ago, about the cost of Operation Midway Blitz. Why would we appropriate more funding to a department that can't even tell us where the money's going? Now, you're here with your handout, asking the American taxpayers for even more money. Enough is enough. This committee cannot keep bankrolling these atrocities, not another penny. And I yield back.
Mr. Guest, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To our witnesses, thank you for being here. Thank you for the men and women that serve under your command. Thank you for your dedication during a very difficult time. And let me apologize to you for the dysfunction of Congress. Let me apologize for the fact that my friends on the other side of the aisle refused to vote to support the funding of DHS, that they refused to recognize the important mission that you serve, that they refuse to support the men and women of law enforcement who stand watch on that wall each and every day protecting the American citizens. And so I just personally want you to know that there are people in Congress, there are people across this country who view what you do as admirable. They view what you do as heroic. They thank you for your service. And so I would ask that when you leave here, when you return to the men and women that you serve with, you please express on my behalf and the constituents of the 3rd Congressional District of Mississippi how much we appreciate what they do. Mr. Scott, I want to ask you a question as it relates to budget reconciliation. Was proud in the budget reconciliation package that we made what I believe was a generational investment in border security. 2 things in particular: wall and barriers, construction, and then technology. Those are areas that I think will continue to pay dividends long after those monies are expended and long after we are no longer in Congress. And so I just want to talk to you very briefly about where we are on the rollout of some of those. First, as it relates to barrier wall construction, can you talk a little bit about the progress that your agency has made, knowing that there are, I'm going to have to say, challenges at times, sometimes court challenges, sometimes environmental challenges. Can you kind of walk me through and walk the committee through where we are as it relates to wall and barrier construction?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. I'm going to say something that you rarely hear in these hearings or anywhere in the federal government. And as far as the border wall construction goes, we're ahead of schedule and we're below budget.
Amen.
We're doing a great job. And I'll just give you
yielding back. Next question.
I'll give you today's numbers. We're at about almost 50 miles of new construction of primary border wall, about 5.5 of buoy barrier, and we're at about 13.2 of secondary barrier. But the important thing there, the big difference is we put a team together that had done this before. So a lot of the issues that we dealt with during Trump 45, land acquisition, different challenges, we know how to get past those now. The team is basically a high-speed, low-drag team, and it's not just CBP. It's working with Department of War, it's working with Department of Justice, and we're doing a lot of good. Every foot of that border wall system, and it's a smart wall, it's not just a barrier. I think a lot of people miss. That has technology built into it, so we know when somebody approaches it, it maximizes the use of our most valuable resources, which is our agents and our personnel.
And want to talk a little bit about the technology and the fact that it's not necessarily just completely a physical barrier. One of the things that there was money in the reconciliation bill was for towers. And towers equipped to help detect individuals approaching the border. And part of the provision that we as Congress placed in that was we wanted those systems to be autonomous, to be able to maximize the resources that you have, to be able to alert someone who could then serve as a force multiplier. So you wouldn't have an agent sitting there looking at a screen all day, that we could use the technology that exists and is being rolled out to make that more efficient. And so I think there was about $1.2 billion, if I'm not mistaken, that we put in there for the tower system. And so my question as it relates to the tower system is, one, can you talk a little bit about the testing and the vetting process for potential vendors of this? And then second, can you also give me a little bit of information, if you have it, about when we would expect the majority of those funds to be put to contract?
Sure. So the autonomy piece, it goes beyond the towers. So we're building that into the ports of entry, into the scans, but we're leveraging AI. And thank you for writing it into the bill, but we are doing it anyway because it's the right thing to do. So the towers themselves, a little bit like the border wall, competition is actually driving dramatic improvements in the capabilities, and it's driving the cost point down. Trump 45, we had one vendor. We have 5 vendors. We have 4 vendors now that have passed the autonomy test. They provided us equipment. We've used the agents. We articulated specific requirements to be able to identify something, a movement, to classify it, and then to continue to track it. And when I say that early in my career, I thought it was great when somebody could call and explain to me on a radio. But what I mean now is that's going to a device that the agents have with them in the field in real time. If an agent wants to take over that tower, they can. But those are the requirements we built in. We're already fielding some of those. We're going through a second testing just in about a month or two that makes double check every one of those towers or those companies can integrate into what we call a COP. but basically they can integrate into a system that it doesn't matter which tower it is, it goes to that phone, if you will, the ATAC, so that the agents can see it better. I'll get back with you on the actual rollout of the timing because we're rolling it out in 3 different phases. And honestly, right now, it's not about signing the contract. It's about making sure that the vendors can buy and get the equipment that they need to build the towers.
And last question, Mr. Scott, as it relates to the testing of these systems, is that something that your agents are there as part of that testing process? Because what I want to make sure is whatever contract that you ultimately decide to enter into, that it is something that is user-friendly to your agents, that we are providing them the information that they need. Often I've seen, I won't say often, occasionally I've seen systems that aren't really operable, and not in your agency particularly, but not really optimal to what is needed by the men and women, the boots on the ground. It's the system that's been provided to them, and then they are forced to use that system. But what I want to make sure, and since we are making what I consider to be a generational, hopefully once-in-a-lifetime investment, that the system that ultimately is chosen is a system that your agents want, that it meets their needs, and that we are designing the system, if you will, around them instead of telling them to perform their work around the system.
Sure. So the short answer is yes. I think you already know this, but I'd highlight, I get it. I spent 30 years as a Border Patrol agent. I suffered through some of that. The tech sheet that the vendors gave us said it was the answer to world hunger, and when we deployed it to the field, it was a joke. We're leveraging those lessons, and again, it's a lot of the same team from Trump 45 that helped build out some of these concepts or looking at it now, but we have third-party validators, and more importantly, we have agents. We're testing this stuff out in the field, getting immediate feedback, and that is built into the test process. I refuse to deploy anything to the field that doesn't help our agents, let alone waste taxpayer money doing it.
Well, thank you. And I'll close with this quote as it relates to working with vendors to provide what they say. Quote from my favorite president of Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Ciscomani, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for being here. You know, when you sit this far down the table and the chairman is as generous as he's been with the time for everyone, it's one of those cases that everything has been said, but not everybody has said it, right? So some of my questions may seem a little repetitive, but I do want to dig into a little more on some of these issues. I'm from Arizona's 6th district. This is in the southeastern corner of the state. This is a border district. This has been a big issue for us from my first term here, and I want to just looking at where we were 3 years ago to today. It's an amazing progress that we've made in this area. So I want to commend not only the 3 of you for that work, but all the men and women in your department that have done that, and you've made tremendous strides, and even along the way in adapting to the different demands that this approach has brought to all the people involved. The order is tall in terms of having to not even sure that we could ever undo what the Biden administration did in terms of an open border policy, but really trying to rescue our nation from what happened in those 4 years and trying to find people that should be deported from this country that are committing crimes here in the United States. So I want to thank you for that. And also, my perspective is unique, and I'll mention this as I get to my last question, but I'm a naturalized citizen, so I've gone through the process. I know what that is like, so I've had some questions for you here towards the last part of it. But the first one I would like to start with Commissioner Scott in terms of the fentanyl, and I think this was also brought up by one of my colleagues. When we look at what the progress that we've made has been very much on the human trafficking side, and even in Arizona, you have different parts of the border, and we saw different traffic over on the west side in the Yuma area with a lot of the family units coming in. Over in the Cochise County area on the eastern side, you saw a lot of the people that were avoiding law enforcement overall in those Biden years. And then in the kind of like center, you have the Santa Cruz County, Nogales area, where the main port of entry is for the state. And we know that fentanyl was being crossed through all three, but really the ports of entry play a key role in intercepting a lot of this. So can you tell me, and I have one question for each, and I would rather not go over, although that seems to be the popular thing to do, but if I could get away with that, can you just tell me real quick on the fentanyl site and the port of entry, what's the latest there?
Sure. So I would say that illegal immigration, by the way, is a distraction. You see it, but the narcotic smuggling is always going on. The ports of entry specifically, thank you for the funding in prior and going forward. The NII equipment, the non-intrusive equipment, allows us to improve the scanning. But it's more than that. We have a national targeting center here in D.C., and we work with the Homeland Security task forces to make sure that we have all the information we possibly can about the smuggling networks, about what they're doing, so that we can actually aim our personnel at the right target at the right time. But the NII is a part of it, but I want to remind the committee too, thank you for it, but it always takes an officer or an agent at the end of the day to decide what's there. The technology just identifies an anomaly. It's really working with the Homeland Security task forces, building the intelligence on these networks, and then actually putting an officer and agent on target. And we're doing that more and more on a daily basis.
I agree with that, and I think there is technology that we can continue to support. Nothing beats, obviously, the boots on the ground and the men and women actually doing that job and the training for that, which comes with recruitment as well and challenges in that area. So I'd love to talk to you more about that offline as well. Director Lyons, you know what, we've heard some of this here, and regarding the holding facilities that you all have, and I visited one in my district, and you know, I saw a very different picture of them from what some of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle like to pay these apparently surprise visits and come out with new findings of all that's going on in there that they claim to be extremely alarming. That's not what I saw when I was there, and I made an appointment like people do, and I showed up and I got a view from the inside, and I asked a lot of questions. We spent hours there. So can you just run through with me and for me what is the status of these facilities, and what are we seeing? Give me the truth on that.
So, sir, first off, just thank you for saying that. You know, I can tell you from my time as being a field office director in the field, I've had an occasion where I've hosted leadership, congressional senate to come in and view our facilities, and have it be a great trip, great informal for the member, and then they go out and they say how horrible we are. What we did with our reconciliation money is we are revamping how we do detention. You know, for so long we've always heard that the cost of ICE's contracting, how much we're actually spending on these facilities that isn't up to par, if you will, we're totally game changing that. So these new facilities, they'll be scalable, and the fact of how many people we can actually put in the facility, if we need it, if we don't, we can move it back. It's going to be a cost saving to government because it's going to be a whole of DHS building where we're going to have immigration courts, CIS, Border Patrol needs space, Secret Service, TSA, all in one location. So while we knew we had a need to revamp and revitalize how we do long-term detention, we wanted to make sure that we use that money in a smart way to benefit all the partners here at the table.
I appreciate that. And yeah, what I saw was obviously people living conditions. There were outside recreational activities they were involved in. There was I visited the medical facility as well within the facility, and saw people getting medical care. So my offline more that I want to have with you as well is regarding additional training and what has changed throughout this last year for agents out in the country conducting these operations. We'll have to have more on that. But I want to close off with Director Edlow. Thank you for being here as well. As I stated earlier, I'm a naturalized citizen. Became a citizen in 2006. This year, I celebrated my 20th year as a U.S. citizen, and I happen to be sitting here as a United States congressman in this committee, being able to work with you on this process. You know, I visit the naturalization ceremonies. I think we naturalize close to 1 million people a year of becoming new citizens. I know the process well. I know that it was long. I know that it was somewhat bureaucratic and expensive to go through, and I am all for the right vetting and making sure that the right people are in this country as they go through the naturalization process. What have you seen in terms of, you said there's the wait time for H-1A visas is 5 to 7 days. Tell me a little more about the actual process of people receiving a permanent work permit or a green card and then citizenship as well. What's that process like, and what resources do you need to improve that system?
Well, Congressman, thank you, and congratulations on the 20 years as a citizen. You embody what it means to actually take this privilege and this honor seriously, and so I'm thrilled to have you say that. In terms of the process, it's very case by case specific. It depends on what the basis is for them getting a visa, whether it's through work or through family member. But the wait times have increased to get through that initial step to get the green card, as well as then to get after the 5-year or the 3-year wait, depending on the situation, to get to the naturalization. Naturalization times are also up slightly than they were previously, but that is largely because I have gone through the process now and have really determined that the last several years we saw a cheapening, I would say, of the process and of the way that it was administered. The way that the good moral character questions were asked or truncated into one question is not acceptable. We've had to reestablish and reteach our adjudicators what good moral character is, what attachment to the Constitution is, what was Congress looking for in naturalization, and that's what we're getting to right now. So yes, times have increased, but I think we are making sure that the people that are being naturalized are in fact the ones who understand, who appreciate, and who are eligible for the privilege of citizenship based on what Congress has intended.
Thank you. Last thing I'll say, Mr. Chairman, is in Arizona about 10 years ago now, we passed a law that requires high school students to pass the same citizenship test that U.S. citizens have to pass in order to graduate high school. And at that time that we did that, not a lot could pass that test. But naturalized citizens, we studied for that test, we passed that test, and now high school students, at least in Arizona, and many other states since then, has that test as well. So thank you for that, Mr. Chairman. I yield back the time that I don't have.
Ms. Hinson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And to my colleague, I'm sure members of Congress probably need to review some of us on that test as well. To our witnesses, thank you so much for being here. You all are leading the front lines in keeping our country safe, and I know that it's been a tumultuous time for you, and I'd echo what my colleague, Mr. Guest, said about, it's a pity that we're in this pickle and that Congress has put you in this pickle, but thank you for standing the line and continuing this good work and reforming a lot of these antiquated processes that need a new look and need a new look to keep our country safe. Director Edlow, I want to start with you. Thank you for your testimony, and I'm interested in your work combating fraud across the system. You talked a little bit about making sure we're making sure the right people are becoming citizens, but making sure we're holding people accountable when they're perpetuating fraud here in the United States is critical. And just last week, USCIS arrested a man from South Korea that had been living in California, misuse of visas, medical fraud, more fraud with green card applications. Fraud does nothing but waste those taxpayer dollars that are so precious, and we need to make sure that people who are applying for legal status the right way get that process. But it's just such a slap in the face to those who are taking advantage of the system. So can you talk about the importance of full funding for fraud prevention specifically and the detection account underneath your agency and the progress you've made in combating that fraud?
Well, thank you, Congresswoman. And no, I appreciate what you're saying. We are working very, very hard to look at every visa category that we administer to determine what changes need to be done to really clamp down on the entitlement fraud, on the visa fraud. And that's why, to the point that I raised earlier with Mr. Cuellar, why it is so critical that we have a small, dedicated group of criminal investigators in our ranks to dig into that in a different way and to bring those cases to the U.S. Attorney's Office so that people realize that it's not a free pass. There is no entitlement. And you're right, it does waste public benefits, but it also, it's a drain on taxpayers all around. In terms of the monies that we are using right now for it, the fees that we take in, we are fairly fully funded when it comes to our immigration examination fee account and our fraud accounts for the purpose of conducting fraud. All of that has been considered as part of our yearly budget that we do. As you know, we don't get a yearly appropriation, so our carryover has to include that, and we are in a very good spot for that. But what I would say, Congresswoman, is we can't look at the immigration system as being in a vacuum. So the work that I do at USCIS and that our agents and officers do at USCIS directly is impacted by and impacts the work that Mr. Lyons' officers and agents do and Commissioner Scott's. We need the full immigration apparatus to be funded and working in order to fully address the fraud, the entitlement fraud, the immigration visa fraud that we are seeing here. And yes, we are making loads of progress. And I would say the relationship, I've been in immigration for a long time, the relationships that we have right now developed between the three agencies that you see before you is the best relationship, the best working relationship that these agencies have had in my opinion, since the founding of the department.
Yeah, and you have to be working in tandem. It's very, very clear. And I think about, and ICE being able to do its job as well in concert with what you're doing, Director Edlow. And Director Lyons, I want to thank you for your leadership. I followed the website, The Worst of the Worst, right? And some of those people in Iowa, it's mortifying to me that those people are allowed to fester in our communities. So we need to make sure you have the resources to be able to get these bad people out of our country and hold them accountable. And I wanted to focus on some of the on-the-ground investigations through HSI. Specifically, I see that HSI has dismantled 350 major criminal organizations, which is incredible. The target was, I think, 131, so it just blew that out of the water. And undoubtedly, that keeps Americans safer than ever before, as we know that those dangerous cartels were pouring drugs into our communities, trafficking women and children, and posing both physical and, of course, cyber threats as well. So I'm focused on a lot of these things, especially tackling them related to the Chinese Communist Party, and knowing the work that HSI has done to fight against the fentanyl trade and other illicit drugs. Can you talk to the threat landscape a little bit and how bad actors like the CCP and others are involved here?
Yes, ma'am. Well, thank you for the support for Homeland Security investigations. And unfortunately, the great work of the special agents and the men and women of HSI gets overlooked, unfortunately, because of that stigma of being a part of immigration and customs enforcement. But they play a huge portion in that, especially in the customs portion. What we've found is that it's key for HSI to have the ability to work international. And that is with our partnership, again, as I spoke earlier about in the Indo-Pacific region, that is key right now. The CCP is a huge threat, as well as their transnational criminal organizations that have come over here to just wreak havoc. And I'll give you an example. HSI actually broke the largest gift card fraud case ever. And it was from transnational gangs within the CCP that were sending that money back to military units in China. And that all came from gift card fraud here in the United States.
So we're literally funding our own adversaries through that fraud.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was unfortunately military-aged Chinese males that entered under the last administration through the porous border that were able to go. And it's something as simple as gift card fraud. We're just supplying small amounts, whether it be $20, $15, back to the People's Republic of China. And that was huge.
And that's all coming from people who can afford it the least, right? I've talked to some of these people who've been victims of fraud, and it is incredible what these transnational organizations are doing to take advantage of our most vulnerable, many of them senior citizens in places like Iowa, who are taken advantage of. Commissioner Scott, with the time I have left, because I know I'm running out here and they've called votes, we're really in a unique position here on the committee to really help with those historic investments already made in the working families tax cut with the agency, and we all want to make sure that those are executed as efficiently as possible. So can you talk about CBP's current status of obligating the funds that you received through reconciliation and how regular order in the CBP operations can keep the agency running without delay?
Sir, so we're having a tremendous success in rolling out and obligating the funds out of the big, beautiful bill. I'd be glad to get with you offline and give you a line by line. As you know, CBP got significant funding out of that. $46.5 billion was for the wall system, but the rest of the money that we got, I'd be very happy to share that with you, because it went everything from aircraft, as we talked about the towers already, some NII equipment, all the above, all of which will play into it. That is still going forward. despite the fact that we're not funded now. So we are still having some significant challenges internally with everything else. I can buy new aircraft right now, but I can't pay to maintain the ones that I currently have. So
That seems backwards, right? I mean,
it seems totally backwards.
you should be able to use those resources. So I think that it goes without saying, this committee has done its work. We've gotten our bills through. Our colleagues on the other side of the aisle need to make sure you all at CBP, ICE, and USCIS can do your job. Thank you.
Thank you.
I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, ma'am. Listen, folks, first of all, thank you. I appreciate it. The last year hasn't been great for the DHS congressional relationship. It's not personal. It's not individually directed. We got a new secretary, former colleague. Of course, that was true of the last one. So anyhow, as far as I'm concerned, we're going forward. But as we go forward, we have learned some lessons. And so information sharing, to put it kindly, was terrible. And so, you know, I remember saying all through the last round, last year, we won't surprise you, don't surprise us. I might as well have been whistling Dixie. Now, I don't think it was because any of you sat down and said, I'm not answering those guys or whatever, or talk to the hand because the face isn't listening. But we've learned things from that too. And so I hope we have a better relationship. I'm not going to tell you I expect it, because we're getting really good at, okay, if you don't answer us, then guess what? You know, and fill in the blank. There's no reason we should be at that point in time. We expect more prompt answers to legitimate questions now that we have new leadership, and I think some of the shackles have probably been taken off. For the get back questions, I already told you, it's like, listen, 48 hours, and you're like, hey, we got other stuff to do. We can't just stand down and answer. Then within 48 hours, say, here's what we're working on it, here's what we expect to give you, here's when we think we'll get it. Crickets won't work. As you know, there'll be other questions and that sort of stuff. And listen, that's all just communication. We're all on a compressed timeline, but I can give you a couple of hints right now to take back to your folks. Voting for anything, no disrespect to the geniuses on the north side of the building, that has goose eggs for you and you, that dog's gonna find a real hard time hunting over here. I don't speak for the speaker, and I don't speak for Chairman Cole. I'm just telling you that everybody learns from their stuff. Leaving somebody behind on the battlefield, and you guys were left, we're sorry. We passed your bill. We passed it off the floor. Job isn't done. Nobody say, you know, hang up that banner, mission accomplished. But nonetheless, when the OMB says, tell Congress to pull their head out, it's like, you know what I'd say if I wasn't trying to imitate a mature young adult. So, having said that, and it's like, okay, reconciliation's the answer. Right now, we're supposed to pass this bill out of the full committee on June 10th. You want to solve a lot of problems? Send this message back to your advisors down the street. A House Homeland bill, which will be passed on a partisan basis, most likely, or a mildly bipartisan basis, is supposed to be done by June 10th. But you know what that has? That has all the traditional stuff. It doesn't have any zeros for anybody in it. It's got, that thing that maybe the Congress does once in a while, which is called oversight. And it's not like we've broke anybody's legs doing oversight lately. That might be something that somebody ought to consider. Because I can tell you that a reconciliation bill, just here, we're plugging in different numbers like 2 years ago or last year, whenever it was. We've learned a few things in that. And quite frankly, the track record, maybe not at your levels, but above your level on responding to that, has been non-robust. How's that for as nice as... See, that makes you not feel too bad about saying, I'm still glad to see you go, but you can go a little slower now. So anyhow, thank you folks very much. Please pass that on. We're off to the races, but you're going with us. You know, that we won't surprise you thing. So when we say, hey, we want answers from you, we are going to be discussing with you and Secretary Mullen, okay, what about this? How about that? How do we fix the deal? I think you've already fixed some of them. You just need somebody to stand up for your fixes. And, you know, like, hey, how do we identify people? Well, if there's a better mousetrap for how to identify agent XYZ by number or whatever, then we're happy to look at that. So anyhow, thanks again. I know you've had enough fun for a day. Congratulations and enjoy the rest of your day.